Hello, this is Strategy Miscellany. This is episode 5 of our Rule the Waves campaign as France. It is July of 1912. We're just coming off an inconclusive war with with the Italians and then also the Austro-Hungarians. We have now designed basically our first modern battleship, the Bernadotte-class battlecruiser here. And so we've got a couple of those in construction. And one thing that I ought to do that I hadn't done yet here, well, need to move this one to Northern Europe. And then I should be putting most of my ships that are in Northern Europe on reserve status. Looks like most of them are there already. Let me just get a few more here. And I like to leave the flagship, which is right now the Vauban, in its remodeled version. I like to leave the flagship in active status, just kind of for role-playing reasons, really. But pretty much everybody else who's in Northern Europe can go to reserve fleet status. And once I can build submarines that aren't just coastal, we'll probably build some more submarines. Also, some Zeppelin bases once we can build those for sure. But because we've set air doctrine to develop slowly, it's taking a while there. I'm going to go ahead and change our tech priorities around here a little bit. Setting some things to low just so that we can concentrate a little bit. I'm hoping to get those Zeppelins before too long. And let's start going through the turns. And we'll see what happens. And in February 1913, we have just developed airships. So I am going to build a few airship bases here. And yes, it's May 1913, and we can now build a medium range submarine. I would like to have some of those. I'm going to build 4. Our airship bases, meanwhile, I've got 2 in western France, 1 in Senegal, 1 in southern France, and 1 in our territory in southern China. And I'd also like to have 1 in French Algeria. And here we've had an event. It's April 1914, where the public has put together a subscription to build a new battleship. And so I've got to put a third battle cruiser on the slipways, but they've given me quite a bit of money to do so. So that's what we're doing here. Our smaller ships that we were building have gotten done constructing. So I think it's time to scrap some of these older destroyers here. And now that we've got our new ships over to replace some of these old ships here, I can scrap the Dupuiteurs. And this old model Muse. Would like a couple more Vendémiaire Corvettes while we're at it. So the Prime Minister has requested additional battleships. So I'm going to try and build something that's a little bit smaller than the Bernadotte class and maybe a little bit slower so it'll be a proper dreadnought and not a battle cruiser. I'll get back to you once I have the design here. All right, so here we have the Villiers design, 22,100, named after a French marshal from the wars of Louis XIV. It's got eight 13-inch guns. It's got six 6-inch guns. It's got about the same armor as the Bernadotte, I believe, a little bit slower at 23 knots. But it does have this nice immunity zone here between 14 and 17,000 yards where basically its own guns can't damage it, or can't penetrate its armor fully anyway. And it does have two levels of torpedo defense. So, I will get one of these developing. And end of 1914, we're finally figuring out the concept of heavier than air flight as it relates to naval operations. And we're also on the brink of war with the Austro-Hungarians. Given that, I'm going to move more ships to the Med. So it's August 1915. Looking at our current situation, I think we need more destroyers. I'm going to design a new model destroyer with some of our improved technology. All right, so here we have the Voltaire-class, 30 knots, 1,000 tons, couple of guns, mine-sweeping gear, and a whole bunch of torpedo tubes. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven torpedo tubes in all on this guy. All right, October 1915, the Third War begins against the Austro-Hungarians. And it begins in epic style with a fleet battle. Let's see who shows up to the Straits of Otranto. And it looks like it's the middle of the night. So I don't know if we're going to find each other, but we'll try. You can see I now have two forces to control. I have my one with my old school pre-dreadnoughts, and then I have my one here with my new school battle cruisers, and some scouting light cruisers and destroyers around also, of course. And it looks like we're going to be at really point blank range with them. We'll see how this goes. They've already hit us with a torpedo. Not ideal. But I think they're already on fire, too. Yep, whatever that was, we blew it up. See where the rest of their fleet got off to. Okay, and I think this battle will last long enough that it'll go until dawn. So we might be able to actually spot them late in the scenario here. Oh, well, never mind. I think that's them. Time to get the battle cruisers in range. Torpedoes flying everywhere. Chaos as the ships go past each other. This could be very bad for us, to be honest. If they get lucky with torpedo hits and we don't. On the other hand, the Austrians seem to be having terrible trouble with flash fires. We've lost a couple of ships to them already. On the other hand, we just lost the battlecruiser Marseille, which is, one of our Bernadotte-class, one of our most expensive and advanced ships. I really don't know what the end result of this whole mess is going to be. Ah, there we go. Now we're getting some torpedo hits in on them. Well, we lost one battle cruiser, but we sank two of their heavy cruisers and three destroyers. I feel like that's kind of a draw. I guess it depends a little bit on what the damage to the other ships was like, too. Which some of our battleships are pretty heavily damaged, too. Just kind of wondering what dawn is going to bring. And here it comes. However, I think their fleet is either sunk or gone home, because I don't see anybody out here. Okay, so that was an Austro-Hungarian major victory. I think, however, it's going to be trouble for them in the long run, having lost, six destroyers and three heavy cruisers, three armored cruisers. Meanwhile, we only permanently lost one ship. The rest of ours will be repaired and back in the fight. So they may win on points for today, but I think we're going to start winning the war if we can keep this sort of thing up. But we'll call this the Adriatic blunder, given that we sort of blundered into each other in the middle of the night. Gonna mobilize all our ships, see if we can bring some more into the Med. And then we need to put a bunch of ships on trade protection duty now that the war has begun. That's exactly what these corvettes are intended for. It's for trade protection. And we can do the same with some of our destroyers here. But it looks like I'm going to have to do the same with some of my older light cruisers also to get enough ships. Meanwhile, let me see if I can do any invasion planning on the Austro-Hungarians, if I'm close enough to land in their territory. I don't think so. Let me see. Oh, I guess I can. All right, invasion target Dalmatia then. See if we can take that from them. And let me just look at the almanac here and see how our fleets compare. So they outnumber us in the big ships. I mean, we have some outdated ones, but they have more modern ones than us. In light cruisers, we crushed them. They don't have any. Destroyers were pretty even. Corvettes were pretty even. Submarines pretty even. Airships, we spectacularly outnumber them. And heavy cruisers were about the same, really. Theirs are a bit heavier, though. But also, our budget is nearly twice theirs, so we can replace losses a lot better than they can. All right, we're sinking their merchant ships, they're sinking ours, we're sinking their submarines, which is something. And here we have a cruiser action. Let's see what happens. Okay, all I have is a couple of light cruisers. I don't know what they have, though. They have a whole swarm of destroyers, it looks like. And night is falling, so we may not be able to do much. Gonna accelerate to 20 knots here. I don't really want to get super close to them if I can help it, because they have a lot of torpedoes. Yeah, I think given that this is all in nighttime, we're going to not get much done. And in a strong gale, too. Alright, yeah, basically just plinked at each other. What I want to do is get enough ships in the Med that I can actually um, get excuse me, that I can actually get a blockade on the Austro-Hungarians. To some extent, these new ships in construction will help if the war goes on long enough, too. Here we have another cruiser battle. Okay, not much showed up to the party today. Looks like not all that much for them either. We'll see what happens, I guess. See if I can get a reading on their ship here. Oh, it's quite large. Yeah, it's definitely well over a match for the poor little Sfax here. I should maybe just get out of the way. Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like they are going to get the better of us in this one. If I had been able to bring one of my modern battle cruisers, it would be a different story. But this is what I got this time. Well, I guess my ship survived. I guess they turned on, they got the engines fixed after we sat there long enough. So they only get a few points off that one. And we are, in fact, blockading them. There we go. That's how we win this war, really. Is just keep up the blockade, and in the end, they'll lose. I'm going to turn off the invasion targeting to save a little money right now. Oh, we can put bombs on our airships. Nice. All right, here we have a big raid on their coastal shipping. With one light cruiser that showed up. Wonderful. The way the fleet management happens in this is kind of random sometimes, really, it feels like. You know, sometimes you get the whole fleet to show up. Sometimes you get one ship. That's it. Can barely see each other in the driving rain. Hopefully, we'll get lucky and run into their convoy. Or maybe the rain will lift. That's just their heavy cruiser again, a different type. Not quite as powerful as the other one, but still more powerful than my vessel. And it looks like night is falling. Don't think I'm going to be able to successfully sink those two ships, unfortunately. Well, there's some kind of gun turret on land. We can go poke around at it. That's too powerful a coastal battery for this little ship to mess with. But yeah, that's the thing with fighting the Austro-Hungarians is you spend a lot of time in the Adriatic. Once, in the late game, we're fighting some kind of epic global war against the British, we'll have, ships all over the world. All right, yeah, we didn't do anything useful in that one. All right, let's see what they've got this time. Looks like maybe a light cruiser. Well, maybe a heavy cruiser, but maybe with our torpedoes, if we get lucky, we can take them out. We do have a good number of little guns. I think we got to get in real close. Because I think if we're far out, their guns will still damage us, but our guns will not damage them. So that's why I'm staying at such close range here. Where, I mean, our ships will take a beating, but at least we'll be able to hit back. And the Sfax is really taking a beating there. The Chateau Renault, though, is still in good shape. And I think we've got their ship on fire. So if we're lucky, might do some serious damage to them. Okay, yeah. There we go. Think we sunk them. Come around for another pass in a little bit here. Yeah, a couple of torpedoes. I find it hard to believe they only have medium damage. All right. Sunk one of their beefy heavy cruisers. See if we can pick up the survivors. But that's quite a coup for the Sfax and the Chateau Renault. Indeed, a glorious victory. Sure, we'll just call it the Battle of Valona. Alright, here we are off Sicily, and we have one of our Bernadotte-class battlecruisers. The flagship, actually. So I'm hoping these 15-inch guns can do a pretty good job. We'll see what they have. They have some big stuff, too. The Lissa class here. I mean, their guns are smaller, but they do have more of them. So I think we should try and stay at long range. They also have much thicker armor than we do, but lighter deck armor. So if we can do ranged attacks with plunging fire, well, now it's nighttime. So we probably won't even find each other. But, that's okay. In the long run, we're going to win this war through blockade. If nothing else changes. So it's okay if we just kind of blunder around and don't find each other in a lot of these battles. Yeah, we plinked at each other. Nothing serious. Apparently they got out of blockade somehow, maybe because the Bernadotte is damaged and it's so big. Well, here's the Chateau Renault, the hero of last time. I think it's just coming up against maybe just a destroyer. Or no, just a little corvette. Now they're in trouble. Unless they've got a bunch of friends around that we haven't seen yet. Yeah, sank that pretty easily. See if there's anybody else around. Sometimes you run into random merchant ships, that sort of thing. All right, and a marginal victory for France. And now that my Bernadotte is repaired, we're blockading them again. Excellent. And we can start building air bases, though I don't think we have any good aircraft yet. All right, but it looks like it's time for another apocalyptic clash in the Straits of Otranto. It begins again. We've got all our old pre-dreadnoughts, one battle cruiser. We'll see what they have. So far, just one ship. Well, it's a battle cruiser. I think my battle cruiser is more powerful than theirs. Plus, I have all my pre-dreadnoughts, which, they're not great, but 5 of them together adds up. Looks like they just have a couple of smaller ships to go along with it. So we might be able to catch one of these Austrian battle cruisers out. We can get some good hits on it. And avoid getting caught up. They do have another big ship there, it looks like. All right, but they're having a lot of flash fire problems. They're having the kind of British at Jutland scenario a little bit right now. Poor ship blew up. That can also happen if you don't armor your turrets enough, I believe. Or it's sort of a middle ground. Like if you don't armor your turrets at all, they're not armored enough to form the density of, trapping the explosion. If you armor them a lot, they're pretty safe. But if you armor them a medium amount, it can be dangerous. I believe is how it works. But yeah, I mean, if we can get, the Zrinyi and that pre-dreadnought there, the Wien class, then that's kind of, winning the war in an afternoon right there. This will kind of be the last war where airplanes aren't really at all involved, just zeppelins and ships. By the next time, we'll have some, at least land-based air and probably some primitive carriers. But yeah, I think we got the Zrinyi. Do another pass. We'll do another pass. Yeah, we sunk it. That's 2 Austrian capitals down. Yep, 1 battle cruiser destroyed, 1 battleship destroyed, or 1 dreadnought destroyed, 1 battleship heavily damaged. Some damage to our side, but nothing severe. And with that, we're going to call that the Glorious 18th. It happened on the 18th of July. And now they're having to decline battle, which is giving us masses of victory points. I think this should win us the war. All of a sudden, it just, the everything kind of toppled over for them at once. Yeah, all of a sudden they just can't bring their ships up to match us. They're going to have to surrender. Yes, we will press for hard terms. No common ground. Well then. See what happens here. Yeah, one of their real early pocket battleships here. Okay, well, it did sink one of our light cruisers. So that's a problem. And the Sfax, I think, must have gotten hit somehow that messed with its steering ability. Kind of inconclusive right now. We'll see what happens. Well, they can still pack a punch. We need to remember that. Okay, here we got the Bernadotte. And the nice thing here is you can see we actually have one of our airship bases here. Well, those are minefields, but those little guys, those are airships on recon. They kind of go out in a search pattern and come back. Eventually, they can drop bombs and carry parasite fighters. We're a ways away from that still. All right. Oh, looks like these are just their corvettes, the poor guys. Oh, they're in trouble. Yep. Sunk. Or maybe they just surrendered an abandoned ship. I'm not quite sure. All right, we have a second Bernadotte working up. Excellent. Let us move it to the med. Well, as you might expect, the army offensive didn't work very well. But they just keep failing to even challenge us. So at some point, the victory points are so lopsided and the blockade keeps working up. It's going to have to result in them surrendering. Or, I mean, if the blockade causes enough unrest, there can even be a revolution in their country. In which case, they have to give up a lot of territories. It can result in like an angry revanchist government, communist or fascist government of some sort that spends more on the military and can be a threat. So that's a possibility. You know, accelerate to squad max to try to catch this guy. One of their dreadnoughts against two of our battle cruisers. Let me look at what they look like. Well, it only has four big guns. It is very heavily armored, 14.5-inch belt. Only 2-inch deck, though. Long range might be better than close range. Well, we can also just close to point blank and blast them with these 15-inch guns, which is what we're kind of doing now. All right. Looks like they got an unlucky hit, and that was their ship. Yeah, Battle of Syracuse is a fine name. And I'd like to build a few more of these Voltaire-class destroyers. After this war, we're going to need to design some new light cruisers, armored cruisers. And we got to put more ships on the trade protection. Okay, I think they don't have any ships out. See what happens. Yep, they're having more demonstrations. Press for hard terms. Here we go. All right, we're going to take Dalmatia, which is their only colony, and then we're going to get a bunch of war reparations from them, too. And we have Dalmatia. which Dalmatia deserves an airship base, of course. At Guitaro sounds good. Eventually, we'll build a turret there too. Oh, they already had an airship base. Well, then we'll have two there. All right. So first thing I'm gonna do is take a bunch of my ships and send them back to Northern Europe. And actually, these very oldest pre-dreadnoughts, I think it's time to scrap them. They've given great service, but it's time for them to retire. And same with these oldest corvettes. All right, now we're going to take a lot of these ships and move them back to Northern Europe in case we have a crisis in that area. We'll keep one Bernadotte in the Med. And then we have a Villiers that'll be built soon. And I'm also going to scrap these earliest coastal submarines that are so unreliable. All right, and with that, glorious victory for France over the Austro-Hungarians. I am going to call that episode here. It is April of 1917, end of episode 5. Next time, we'll start working on an air force to match our navy. Well, a heavier than air force. We already have our glorious airships. And start thinking about new designs for some kind of colonial cruiser that can basically handle our foreign stations' tonnage requirements. And then some kind of heavy armored cruiser, maybe, that can actually go toe to toe with the kind of things the Austrians were building, because our heavy cruisers were kind of found wanting a little bit in that war. So those are my current plans. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.